Elliot Harrington sat alone in his lavish penthouse, the city lights of Manhattan stretching endlessly before him. The room was silent except for the soft clink of ice in his glass of bourbon. The grandeur of his surroundings, a leather couch worth more than most people's yearly salaries, original artwork hanging on the walls, offered no comfort. At 32, Elliot was at the pinnacle of success, CEO of Harrington Industries, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and a fixture on the Forbes 100 list. Yet, despite all his accomplishments, a persistent emptiness gnawed at him. His wealth and charm had always drawn people to him, but over the years, he had grown weary of shallow relationships. Friends, romantic partners, even business associates often seemed more interested in his money or connections than in who he was as a person. Elliot had tried dating countless women, but every relationship eventually faltered. They adored the billionaire, but no one seemed to care about the man beneath the tailored suits and perfect smile. The final straw came during a gala event a few weeks earlier. His then-girlfriend, Sophia, had been glued to his arm all evening, dazzling in a designer gown he'd paid for. But as soon as the cameras were off, so was her charm. Their relationship ended that night in a cold, detached argument. "You're never going to find someone who truly loves you, Elliot," Sophia had said, her tone biting. "Not with your money. No one will ever see past it." Her words haunted him. Elliot had always suspected this was true, but hearing it aloud made it unbearable. Sitting in his penthouse now, he felt more like a prisoner than a man living at the top of the world. That evening, his childhood best friend, Leo Spencer, came over for their weekly catch-up. Leo, a high school teacher with a modest salary and an unassuming lifestyle, had always been Elliot's grounding force. They had grown up together in a working-class neighborhood before Elliot's father struck gold with Harrington Industries. While Elliot's life skyrocketed into the stratosphere of luxury, Leo stayed close to their roots. "You're brooding," Leo said as he sank into one of Elliot's absurdly comfortable chairs. "What's going on?" Elliot sighed and swirled the ice in his glass. "Sophia and I broke up." Leo shrugged. "She didn't seem like the right fit anyway." Elliot's lips curved into a humorless smile. "The right fit? That's the problem, isn't it? No one ever fits. No one ever sees me for who I am. It's always about what I can give them, where I can take them, how I can make their lives better." Leo studied him, his brow furrowing. "You're looking for something real?" Elliot nodded, the weight of his frustration evident. "I don't know if that's even possible for someone like me. How can I find someone genuine when all they see is the billionaire?" Leo leaned back, thoughtful. "You can't. Not as Elliot Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Industries." The words hung in the air. Leo had a point, one that Elliot couldn't ignore. The people in his life were drawn to his wealth and status like moths to a flame. But what if he stripped all of that away? What if he became someone entirely different, someone unremarkable, someone whose only asset was his character? A flicker of an idea began to form. Elliot set his glass down and leaned forward. "What if I went undercover?" he said, his voice gaining momentum. "What if I left behind the suits, the cars, the penthouse, and lived like an ordinary person?" Leo raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Elliot replied. "If I want to find someone who loves me for me, I need to take money and power out of the equation." The practicality of such a plan was daunting, but Elliot was determined. Over the next week, he fleshed out the details. His new identity would be simple and low-profile, Elliot Hart, a working-class taxi driver navigating the streets of New York. With help from Leo and a few trusted advisors, he secured a modest apartment in Queens, leased a beat-up yellow cab, and stocked his wardrobe with jeans, flannel shirts, and scuffed sneakers. The sleek watches and designer suits were locked away, replaced by an unassuming leather jacket and a baseball cap. Before stepping into his new role, Elliot sat with his grandmother's portrait in his study. She had always been his moral compass, reminding him of the importance of humility and authenticity. "You're more than the family fortune," she had told him often. "Never let the money define you." Her words guided him as he took the plunge into his new life. For the first time in years, Elliot felt a sense of excitement, nervous, yes, but also hopeful. He wanted to know what it was like to live without the weight of his name, to connect with people who had no idea who he really was. The day he climbed into the driver's seat of his leased taxi, Elliot looked at himself in the rearview mirror. Gone was the polished billionaire, in his place was a regular guy with tousled hair and a hopeful smile. Elliot's first few days as Elliot Hart, the taxi driver, were a jarring departure from the life he had known. Trading his sleek chauffeur-driven limousine for a battered yellow cab with squeaky brakes and a sticky steering wheel was an adjustment in itself. Navigating the chaos of New York City traffic added a layer of stress he hadn't anticipated. But as he maneuvered through honking cars and impatient pedestrians, he found himself strangely exhilarated by the challenge. His days started early, with coffee from a corner deli and a quick glance at a crumpled map he kept in the glove compartment. The simplicity of the routine was refreshing: no board meetings, no tailored suits, no relentless scrutiny. Instead, Elliot was just another face in the crowd, blending into the city's endless hustle. One of the first lessons Elliot learned was that driving a taxi meant more than just getting people from point A to point B. Each passenger brought a slice of life into his cab: joy, frustration, heartbreak, or excitement, and Elliot found himself listening to stories he never would have encountered in his usual circles. There was the young actor rehearsing lines under his breath, the exhausted nurse on her way home after a double shift, and the elderly man reminiscing about the New York of his youth. Elliot quickly realized that this job gave him something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine human connection. His passengers spoke to him as an equal, not as a billionaire or a CEO, but as a fellow human navigating the challenges of life. One evening, as Elliot pulled up to a modest brownstone, a passenger climbed into the back seat, a woman in her late 20s with a kind smile and an air of quiet determination. Nora Bennett was a preschool teacher who had just finished a long day and was heading to a friend's birthday dinner. She wore a simple dress and carried a brightly wrapped gift in her lap. "Thanks for picking me up," she said as she buckled her seatbelt. "I've been running late all day." Elliot smiled in the rearview mirror. "No problem. Where to?" As they drove through the bustling streets, Nora struck up a conversation. She talked about her students and their antics, her love for teaching, and her plans to eventually open her own daycare center. Her passion for her work was evident, and Elliot found himself captivated by her warmth and sincerity. "Do you like driving a cab?" Nora asked, her tone curious rather than judgmental. Elliot hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "It's different," he said carefully. "But I like meeting people. Everyone has a story, and it's interesting to hear them." Nora nodded thoughtfully. "I like that perspective. I think a lot of people forget to really see each other." As they reached her destination, Nora handed Elliot the fare and a generous tip. "Thanks for the ride, and the chat," she said with a smile. "It was nice talking to someone who listens." Elliot watched her disappear into the brownstone, feeling a strange sense of longing. Nora's genuine kindness and lack of pretense had left an impression on him. For the first time in a long while, he had met someone who seemed entirely authentic. The days turned into weeks, and Elliot settled into his new routine. He worked long hours, crisscrossing the city and collecting a kaleidoscope of stories from his passengers. He learned to laugh at the quirks of his job, like tourists insisting on seeing Times Square despite the traffic, and found satisfaction in the small moments, like helping an elderly woman carry her groceries or listening to a passenger's heartbreak. But the highlight of his days came whenever Nora appeared. She often hailed his cab on her way home from work or to meet friends, and their conversations grew more personal with each ride. Nora told Elliot about her love for painting, her close relationship with her younger sister, and her dream of traveling to Italy. She spoke openly and honestly, unaware that the man behind the wheel was anything more than a hard-working taxi driver. Elliot, in turn, shared pieces of himself, carefully curated to fit his new identity. He told Nora about his love for art, though he didn't mention his private collection of masterpieces, and his belief in chasing dreams, without revealing that his fortune made his own dreams more attainable. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, and Elliot began to look forward to her rides as the brightest moments of his day. One evening, after dropping Nora off at her apartment, Elliot found himself parked on a quiet street, lost in thought. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly connecting with someone who saw him as a person, not as a billionaire or a means to an end. But he also knew that his deception couldn't last forever. The truth about his identity loomed over him, and he wondered how Nora would react when she found out who he really was. "Are you doing this to find love?" Elliot asked himself, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror, "or to prove that you deserve it?" The question lingered as Elliot started the engine and merged back into the flow of traffic. For now, he decided, he would focus on the journey and let the destination reveal itself in time. As the weeks went by, Elliot found himself eagerly anticipating the moments when Nora would step into his cab. Her presence was like a breath of fresh air in his new, unassuming life as a taxi driver. Each ride became an opportunity to learn more about her, her quirks, her dreams, and the values that made her the kind-hearted, authentic person she was. Nora, in turn, seemed to enjoy the rides as much as he did. She often joked that he was the most philosophical cab driver she'd ever met. "You should write a book about all the stories you've heard," she said one evening as the cab weaved through Manhattan traffic. "I bet it would be a bestseller." Elliot laughed, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "I'm not sure anyone would want to read about my life," he replied. "It's pretty simple." Nora tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. "Simple isn't a bad thing. Sometimes, it's exactly what we need." Her words resonated deeply with Elliot. For years, his life had been anything but simple, filled with opulence, constant scrutiny, and endless demands. Yet here he was, finding solace in the quiet moments of his new routine and the easy, unguarded conversations he shared with Nora. One evening, Nora climbed into the cab with a canvas tucked under her arm. She looked both nervous and excited, and Elliot couldn't help but ask, "What's the occasion?" "I'm dropping this off at a small gallery downtown," she explained, holding up the canvas. It was a painting of a serene landscape, the colors vibrant yet soothing. "They're hosting a community art show, and I finally worked up the courage to submit something." Elliot was impressed. "It's beautiful," he said sincerely. "You're really talented." Nora blushed, her fingers brushing the edge of the canvas. "Thanks. Painting is just something I do for myself, though. It's not like I'm a professional or anything." "You don't have to be a professional to make something meaningful," Elliot replied. "And putting your work out there takes courage. Not everyone can do that." His words seemed to bolster Nora's confidence, and she smiled. "I guess we'll see how it goes." As they arrived at the gallery, Elliot offered to help her carry the painting inside. Standing among the other submissions, Nora's work stood out, a reflection of her unique perspective and quiet strength. "You've got something special here," Elliot said as he set the painting down. "I hope you know that." For a moment, Nora studied him, her expression softening. "You're a good listener, Elliot," she said. "Not many people are." Her words lingered in his mind long after he dropped her off at home. For the first time in years, Elliot felt seen, not as a billionaire, but as a person. As their conversations grew deeper, Elliot and Nora began to share more personal stories. Nora told him about her struggles growing up in a working-class family, where every dollar was stretched thin. She spoke about her father, who had passed away when she was a teenager, and her mother, who worked tirelessly to support her and her younger sister. "She's the strongest person I know," Nora said one night. "Everything I've done is because of her sacrifices." Elliot admired her humility and resilience, traits that were rare in the world he usually inhabited. Her story was a stark contrast to his own privileged upbringing, but it reminded him of his late grandmother's teachings about the importance of character over wealth. In return, Elliot shared glimpses of his life, carefully avoiding details that might reveal his true identity. He spoke about growing up with high expectations, the pressure to succeed, and the loneliness that often came with it. While he didn't mention the billions of dollars tied to his name, he found solace in being honest about the emotional toll of his journey. "You don't have to have it all figured out," Nora told him during one of their talks. Sometimes, it's enough to just keep moving forward. Her words were simple but profound, and they stayed with Elliot long after their conversation ended. As their connection deepened, Elliot found himself wrestling with the growing weight of his deception. He had built their relationship on the premise of being Elliot Hart, the taxi driver, not Elliot Harrington, the billionaire CEO. While he cherished the bond they were forming, he knew that revealing the truth could change everything. Leo, his childhood friend, noticed the change in him during one of their check-ins. "You've got that look," Leo said, smirking as they sat in Elliot's modest apartment. "The I'm falling for someone look." Elliot sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I am, Leo. But she doesn't know who I really am." Leo's smirk faded, replaced by concern. "You need to tell her eventually. If you want something real, you can't build it on a lie." "I know," Elliot admitted. "I just don't know when, or how." The turning point came one rainy evening when Nora confided in him about her fears. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm not enough," she said, her voice barely audible over the patter of rain on the cab's roof. "Like I'm just spinning my wheels, trying to make something of myself but never quite getting there." Elliot's heart ached for her. "You are more than enough, Nora," he said earnestly. "You've got more strength and heart than anyone I've ever met." Her eyes met his in the rearview mirror, filled with gratitude and something else, trust. In that moment, Elliot realized he couldn't keep lying to her. Nora deserved the truth, and if their connection was real, it would withstand whatever came next. But revealing his secret would mean risking everything, the trust they had built, the bond they shared, and the possibility of something more. Elliot decided that when the time was right, he would tell her everything. For now, he would treasure the moments they shared, knowing that the truth was just around the corner. The day Elliot decided to reveal his true identity to Nora began like any other. He started his morning with a cup of coffee from the corner deli and mentally prepared for another day of navigating the city streets. But today, his mind was consumed by the weight of what he was about to do. His heart raced at the thought of how Nora would react when she learned that the humble taxi driver she had grown close to was, in fact, a billionaire hiding in plain sight. As fate would have it, Nora hailed his cab that very evening. She slid into the back seat, her smile lighting up the dim interior. "Hey, Elliot," she said, her voice warm. "Thanks for picking me up. Long day." "Anytime," he replied, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. His usual ease around her was replaced by a nervous tension she didn't seem to notice. They talked as they always did, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Nora told him about her students' latest antics and an art piece she was working on for another local show. Elliot listened, hanging on to her every word, but his responses were more subdued than usual. When they arrived at her apartment, Elliot hesitated before she could get out of the cab. "Nora, wait," he said, his voice unusually serious. "There's something I need to tell you." Nora turned back, concern flickering across her face. "What is it?" Elliot took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "I haven't been completely honest with you," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'm not who you think I am." Nora's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I'm not just a taxi driver," he admitted. "My real name is Elliot Harrington. I'm the CEO of Harrington Industries." For a moment, the cab was silent. Nora stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, she let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're kidding, right?" Elliot shook his head. "I wish I were. I wanted to find someone who could see me for who I am, not my money or status. That's why I've been pretending to be someone else." Nora's smile faded as the weight of his words sank in. "So, everything you've told me about your life, it's all been a lie?" "Not all of it," Elliot said quickly. "Everything I've told you about how I feel, about what matters to me, that's real. You've shown me something I haven't felt in years, Nora. Something genuine." But Nora's expression remained guarded. "You lied to me, Elliot. How am I supposed to trust you now?" Elliot's heart sank. He had prepared himself for this reaction, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. I understand if you're angry, he said quietly. I just couldn't keep lying to you. You deserve the truth. Nora opened the door and stepped out of the cab, her movements stiff. She turned back to face him, her voice trembling. I don't know if I can do this, Elliot. I need time. Elliot nodded, his chest tight with regret. Take all the time you need. The days that followed were some of the longest of Elliot's life. Nora didn't call, and he didn't dare contact her, respecting her need for space. He spent his time reflecting on his choices, replaying their conversations in his mind and wondering if he had made a mistake by not telling her the truth sooner. Leo, ever the voice of reason, stopped by Elliot's apartment one evening. You did what you had to do, Leo said, handing Elliot a beer. If she's the right person, she'll come around. But if she doesn't, maybe that's the price you pay for trying to find something real. Elliot sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just don't want her to think I didn't care about her. She's the first person who's made me feel like myself in years. Then tell her that, Leo said simply. 2 weeks later, Elliot received a text from Nora. Can we talk? His heart leapt as he quickly typed a response, of course. When and where? She suggested meeting at the small park near her apartment, a quiet spot they had talked about once but never visited together. Elliot arrived early, pacing nervously as he waited for her. When Nora finally appeared, her expression was calm but unreadable. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sitting down on a bench. Elliot joined her, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I owe you an apology, he began. For lying to you, for not trusting you with the truth sooner. I thought I was protecting myself, but I see now that I hurt you in the process. That was never my intention. Nora studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his. Why did you do it, Elliot? Why go through all this? Because I was tired of being seen as just a billionaire, he admitted. I wanted to meet someone who could love me for who I am, not for what I have. And with you. I found that. You made me feel like I mattered, not my money or my name, just me. Nora looked down at her hands, her voice soft. I don't care about your money, Elliot. I never have. But what hurt the most was feeling like you didn't trust me enough to be honest. I know, Elliot said, his voice breaking. And I hate that I made you feel that way. If I could go back and do things differently, I would. Silence stretched between them before Nora finally spoke. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, Elliot. But I don't want to throw away what we have without trying. Elliot's chest filled with relief and hope. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, Nora. I mean that. She nodded, a faint smile breaking through. Good. Because trust is something we'll have to build together. As they walked through the park, their conversation flowed like it always had, easy, genuine, and filled with warmth. For the first time, Elliot felt like he could truly breathe, knowing that the person walking beside him saw him for who he really was. In the days and weeks following their conversation in the park, Elliot and Nora worked to rebuild the fragile trust between them. Their connection, once effortless, now required intentionality and patience. Elliot knew that Nora's willingness to give him another chance was a gift he couldn't take for granted, and he resolved to prove himself worthy of it. Elliot began by being completely transparent. He shared more about his life as Elliot Harrington, the pressures of running a multi-billion-dollar company, the loneliness that came with his status, and the reasons he had felt the need to hide behind a simpler persona. He introduced her to the parts of his world that he had previously kept hidden, ensuring she understood that his feelings for her had always been genuine. Nora listened intently, her guarded expression softening as she heard the vulnerability in his words. You've been through a lot, she said one evening as they sat in her apartment, a simple yet cozy space filled with her artwork. But you can't shut people out forever, Elliot. You have to let the right ones in. I know that now, Elliot admitted. And I want you to be one of those people. Elliot also made an effort to support Nora's dreams, not with grand gestures but with genuine encouragement. When she mentioned feeling overwhelmed about an upcoming art show, he offered to help in any way he could. He spent hours with her in her small studio, listening as she talked through her ideas and helping her organize her submissions. One evening, as they worked side by side, Nora looked at him with a hint of a smile. "You're pretty good at this whole normal life thing," she teased. Elliot chuckled. "I had a great teacher." Her laughter warmed the room, and for a moment, the tension between them seemed to lift. It was a reminder that, despite everything, their connection still had the potential to grow stronger. Elliot also took steps to bridge the gap between his world and Nora's. He invited her to a small dinner with his childhood friend, Leo, knowing that Leo's down-to-earth personality would put her at ease. The evening was filled with laughter and easy conversation, and by the end of it, Nora seemed more comfortable in Elliot's company. "I like Leo," Nora said later as Elliot walked her home. "He's grounded. He reminds me a little of you, how you were as Elliot Hart." Elliot smiled, her words touching something deep within him. "That's who I've always wanted to be. Someone real." "And you are," Nora said softly. "You just have to let people see it." The first major test of their relationship came when Elliot invited Nora to attend a charity gala hosted by Harrington Industries. It was a far cry from the quiet art shows Nora was used to, an extravagant event filled with wealthy socialites, flashing cameras, and endless chatter. Elliot could sense her apprehension as they entered the grand ballroom, her hand gripping his arm tightly. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and reassuring. Nora nodded, though her eyes darted nervously around the room. "It's just, a lot." Elliot squeezed her hand. "We can leave any time you want." "I mean it." But Nora shook her head, determination flashing in her eyes. "No, I'm here for you." As the evening progressed, Nora found her footing. She charmed Elliot's colleagues with her wit and sincerity, her warmth a stark contrast to the polished but often shallow demeanor of the other attendees. Elliot watched her with pride, realizing how lucky he was to have someone so genuine by his side. At one point, a particularly inquisitive guest asked Nora how she and Elliot had met. Nora hesitated, glancing at Elliot with a small smile. "Let's just say it's a story for the ages," she said lightly, earning a round of laughter. Later, as they danced under the glittering chandeliers, Elliot leaned in and whispered, "You're incredible, you know that?" Nora smiled up at him, her eyes shining. "I think we make a pretty good team." The trust they were rebuilding wasn't without its challenges. Nora occasionally questioned Elliot's intentions, and Elliot sometimes struggled to balance his busy life with the emotional vulnerability their relationship required. But each time they hit a rough patch, they faced it together, talking through their fears and insecurities with honesty and respect. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop of Elliot's penthouse, watching the city lights flicker below, Nora turned to him with a serious expression. "I need you to promise me something," she said. "Anything," Elliot replied without hesitation. "Promise me you'll never hide from me again," she said. "No more secrets. No more pretending." Elliot reached for her hand, his gaze steady. "I promise, Nora. No more secrets." By the time Nora's next art show arrived, their relationship had grown stronger than ever. Elliot was there to support her, standing by her side as she unveiled her latest work to an enthusiastic crowd. One of her pieces, a stunning abstract painting of two figures connected by a swirling ribbon of light, caught the attention of a prominent gallery owner. "This is incredible," the gallery owner said, his eyes bright with admiration. "What's the story behind it?" Nora glanced at Elliot, a soft smile playing on her lips. "It's about finding connection in unexpected places," she said simply. Elliot felt a surge of pride and gratitude. In that moment, he realized that their relationship was no longer about improving himself or earning her trust. It was about building a life together, one rooted in honesty, mutual respect, and the kind of love that could weather any storm. As Elliot and Nora settled into their relationship, they both realized the importance of finding balance between their vastly different worlds. Elliot's life as a billionaire CEO was fast-paced and demanding, filled with high-stakes decisions, media scrutiny, and lavish events. Nora, on the other hand, cherished her quiet, creative life as an artist and teacher. Reconciling these two lifestyles required patience, compromise, and a willingness to embrace each other's differences. Elliot made an effort to carve out time for the simple things that Nora valued. He joined her for walks through the park, helped her set up for community art workshops, and spent quiet evenings in her cozy apartment, where they cooked dinner together and listened to her favorite vinyl records. For Elliot, these moments were a welcome reprieve from the chaos of his professional life. They reminded him of why he had embarked on this journey in the first place, to find something real. One Saturday morning, Elliot surprised Nora by showing up at her art class with a tray of pastries and coffee. The children in her class were thrilled by the unexpected visit, and Elliot quickly found himself roped into helping them paint. By the end of the session, his hands were covered in bright streaks of color, and the kids were laughing at his playful attempts to create a masterpiece. "You're surprisingly good at this," Nora teased as she watched him interact with the children. Elliot grinned, holding up a canvas that featured a lopsided but colorful sun. "I think I've found my calling." The light-hearted moment solidified Elliot's place in Nora's world. He wasn't just a billionaire stepping into her life, he was becoming part of it, one shared experience at a time. Nora, in turn, began to explore Elliot's world, though it was often intimidating. She accompanied him to business dinners, charity galas, and meetings with influential figures. At first, she felt like an outsider, unsure of how to navigate the polished and competitive environment. But Elliot's steady presence gave her confidence, and she gradually found her voice. One evening, during a dinner with potential business partners, Nora overheard a discussion about an upcoming community initiative. The conversation focused on the financial aspects, but Nora couldn't help but interject. "Have you considered partnering with local schools or art programs?" she asked, her tone thoughtful. "It could create a more meaningful impact." The suggestion caught the attention of the table, and the partners began asking her questions. Elliot watched with pride as Nora spoke passionately about the importance of supporting underprivileged communities. By the end of the dinner, her ideas had been incorporated into the initiative's framework. "You were incredible tonight," Elliot told her afterward as they walked to the car. "You have no idea how much you impressed them." Nora blushed, but her smile was radiant. "I just spoke from the heart." "And that's why they listen," Elliot said, taking her hand. Despite their efforts, there were moments when their differences created tension. Elliot's demanding schedule sometimes left Nora feeling neglected, while Nora's reluctance to fully embrace the spotlight made Elliot worry about the long-term viability of their relationship. They argued occasionally, but their fights were always rooted in genuine concern for each other. One particularly heated argument arose when Elliot had to cancel plans for a weekend getaway due to an emergency at Harrington Industries. Nora, who had been looking forward to the trip, felt hurt and disappointed. "I get that your work is important," she said, her voice trembling. "But sometimes, it feels like I'm always second place." Elliot sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't want you to feel that way, Nora. I'm trying to balance everything, but it's harder than I thought." "Then let me help," she said. "You don't have to do this alone, Elliot. We're a team, remember?" Her words struck a chord, and Elliot realized that he needed to trust Nora as much as she trusted him. From that moment on, they made a conscious effort to communicate more openly and prioritize their relationship amidst the chaos of their lives. One of their most transformative experiences came when Elliot invited Nora to visit his family's estate in the Hamptons. The sprawling property, with its manicured gardens and breathtaking ocean views, was a stark contrast to the modest life Nora had known. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, Nora saw it as an opportunity to understand a deeper part of Elliot's life. As they walked along the beach one evening, Nora turned to him and said, "This place is beautiful, Elliot. But it doesn't define you. You're more than this." Her words brought tears to his eyes. For so long, Elliot had felt trapped by the expectations and perceptions tied to his wealth. Hearing Nora affirm his worth beyond his material possessions reminded him of why he had fallen in love with her. "You make me feel like I can be myself," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "No one else has ever done that." Nora smiled, squeezing his hand. "That's because I see the real you, Elliot. And I always will. Their relationship grew stronger as they learned to embrace the unique challenges of their lives. Elliot continued to support Nora's artistic endeavors, attending her gallery shows and helping her expand her community art programs. Nora, in turn, became a quiet but steady presence in Elliot's professional life, offering insights and encouragement when he needed it most. For Elliot, the journey had come full circle. He had started as a man searching for something real, and now he had found it, not just in Nora, but in the life they were building together. He realized that true love wasn't about erasing differences but about finding balance, growing together, and supporting each other through every twist and turn. As the months turned into years, Elliot and Nora's relationship blossomed into a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and unwavering love. They had overcome the challenges of their different worlds, and together, they created a life that was uniquely their own. Elliot continued to lead Harrington Industries with a renewed sense of purpose. Inspired by Nora's passion for community, he restructured parts of his company to prioritize philanthropic initiatives. Under his leadership, Harrington Industries launched programs supporting education, the arts, and underprivileged communities, causes that Nora had opened his eyes to. Nora, in turn, flourished as an artist. With Elliot's encouragement and the support of her growing network, her work gained recognition on a national level. Her paintings, often inspired by themes of connection and resilience, resonated with audiences from all walks of life. Despite her success, Nora remained deeply committed to her roots, continuing to teach art classes and mentor young artists in her community. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the bustling streets of New York, Nora turned to Elliot with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever miss being Elliot Hart, the taxi driver?" she asked with a teasing smile. Elliot chuckled. "Sometimes," he admitted. "There was something freeing about living a simple life. But I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything." Nora nodded, her gaze softening. "Me neither. It's not about where we started, it's about where we're going." Their love story became a source of inspiration for those around them. Friends and colleagues marveled at how they had bridged the gap between their vastly different lives, proving that true love could thrive despite the odds. Even Leo, Elliot's ever-pragmatic best friend, found himself deeply moved by their journey. "You know," Leo said one evening as they shared a drink, "I always thought you were crazy for pretending to be a taxi driver. But looking at you and Nora now, maybe it was the smartest thing you've ever done." Elliot laughed, raising his glass. "To crazy ideas, and to the people who make them worth it." To that, Leo agreed, clinking his glass against Elliot's. One of the most meaningful milestones in their relationship came when Elliot proposed to Nora. He planned a simple but heartfelt evening, choosing the rooftop of their favorite building, a place where they often sat and watched the city lights together. As the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Elliot took her hand. "Nora, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You've shown me what it means to be truly seen, to be loved for who I am. I don't want to imagine a future without you." With that, he got down on one knee and opened a small velvet box, revealing a stunning but understated ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Nora's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Elliot. 1,000 times yes." As they embraced, the city below seemed to blur into the background, leaving only the two of them and the promise of the life they would build together. Their wedding was a reflection of their journey, elegant yet intimate, with close friends and family gathered to celebrate their union. Nora walked down the aisle in a gown she had designed herself, her artful touch evident in every detail. Elliot, waiting for her at the altar, couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for the moment that had brought them together. As they exchanged vows, their words were filled with sincerity and hope. "I promise to love you for who you are," Nora said, her voice steady. "Not for your name, your wealth, or your title, but for the man who made me believe in love again." "And I promise to always see you," Elliot replied, his voice full of emotion. "To support your dreams, to honor your strength, and to cherish the life we've built together." The years that followed were filled with new adventures and shared milestones. They traveled the world, finding inspiration in different cultures and landscapes. They expanded their philanthropic efforts, using their resources to make a meaningful impact on the lives of others. And through it all, they remained each other's greatest source of strength and joy. Elliot often reflected on the journey that had brought them together, how his decision to disguise himself as a taxi driver had led him to the one person who saw him for who he truly was. "You're my greatest adventure," he told Nora one evening as they sat by the fire in their home. "And my greatest love." Nora smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And you're my partner in all things, crazy ideas included." Together, they proved that love wasn't about appearances or circumstances. It was about the choices they made, the trust they built, and the life they created, hand in hand, every step of the way.